This episode of Selling with Social is being brought to you by STAR, the Sales Team Alpine Retreat, a Frost Sullivan Executive MindXchange taking place this February 7th through 9th, 2018 in Lake Tahoe, Nevada. And now to Selling with Social.
If you're doing it right, sales operations is a portion of your sales organization, driving enablement, and really you're the bridge between the business and sales. So your job is to make the business goals aligned to the sellers.
Hey y'all, welcome to Selling with Social, the podcast that helps marketers increase marketing qualified leads, sales reps to shatter sales results, and sales leaders to grow as leaders. Each show, we interview sales, marketing, and social media practitioners, leaders, and influencers to help you connect, close more deals, build stronger relationships with clients, and improve your sales productivity. I'm Mario Martinez Jr. You're now listening to Selling with Social. Bill Sexton, thank you so much, my friend, for joining me on Selling with Social here today. I'm excited to have Samsung Electronics America, the Director of B2B Sales Operations at Samsung, you, my friend, joining me on this show. Thank you.
Thank you for having me. Very exciting.
So very exciting to always have sales operations on the podcast on Selling with Social, because the topics that we're going to talk about today are kind of near and dear to my heart. And every salesperson, every sales leader will want to understand these topics and actually probably want to be involved in this discussion. Talking about analytics, reporting, forecasting, compensation, planning, designing, and the big one that I want to talk about is why and who gets to approve moving my cheese when it comes to setting quota. So we've got some good topics here. But before we get into that, Bill, just do us a favor. Tell us a little bit about yourself and your background, business and or personal.
Sure. I'll give you a little business first and then some personal. I've been in the enterprise mobility space for about 18 years. I started at a company called Symbol Technology, who is the original enterprise mobility company. We were then purchased by Motorola, which split into Motorola Solutions, and then Symbol was eventually purchased by Zebra. So the joke I've always said is for the first 16 years of my career, 17 years of my career, I only moved my desk about 100 feet and worked for 4 publicly traded companies. So something a little unique there. And throughout that process, I started in finance, joined the supply chain team, and started working in sales and operations planning, and built an S&OP process when that was kind of the up and coming thing. And that got me really tightly aligned with the sales organization, and then migrated over to sales operations in one of our sales transition periods. So we were moving our sales organization from a territory-based organization to vertical. And they tapped me on the shoulder to help implement that. So lots of experience in implementing and designing go-to-market structure and all the classic pieces of sales operations. I did that again for Zebra Technologies when they bought Symbol, and then decided Samsung was too hard to resist when they came tapping me on the shoulder, and came over here about 15, almost 16 months ago now to build out their B2B sales operations organization and really help design the go-to-market strategy for the business-to-business organization within the mobile group at Samsung. So it's been real exciting to build out a new sales structure within this massive $300 billion company. It's been quite the experience.
Well, my background actually is not too far dissimilar to yours, but we actually were friends. You and I didn't know that in your past lives. I actually used to work for Sprint, who bought Nextel. And as you know, Solutions was a strong partner of the old Nextel platform, which is no longer in existence.
Cool.
The IDEN, yes, the IDEN network. And that poor network, boy, when they shut it down and migrated everything over, that was a disaster.
It was a long and painful death.
Oh, believe me, I know it.
I can only imagine on the Sprint side.
Oh my gosh. Well, we won't go into much of that one, but we were friends without even knowing that we were friends. Well,
Look at that.
Do me this favor. I always love asking my guests something special, tell us something that we wouldn't know about you by looking at any of your social profiles. Give us something juicy, Bill. Something juicy.
Absolutely. something juicy. So I'll give you something a little fun. When I was 6 years old in first grade, I broke my left arm back to back twice. So I was a cast for the good part of that grade. And I was actually left-handed and my first baseball glove. So I wore on my right hand, but had to start switching hands in school. So in second grade, I became right-handed. So I do a lot of things lefty and some things righty. And one of the odd things that I cannot do right-handed for the life of me is play pool and use a cue stick right-handed. I still do it lefty and I can't switch. And that's one of the few things I can't switch over. I don't know why. And people always call me out on it if I'm playing billiards with them.
So wait, do you write now with your right hand or your left hand?
Right. I do almost everything righty except for pool and eating.
Look at that. I didn't even know that was possible for you to switch over and become a self-made ambidextrous.
That's right. Not by choice.
Yeah, interesting. Okay, that's a good fun fact. Well, thanks for sharing that with me. I didn't know that you could actually, I thought it was a part of your DNA makeup, to be honest with you, to be a lefty or a righty.
Well, my handwriting is pretty atrocious, so let's go if it's a DNA issue.
All right, I didn't say that. Fantastic. Well, listen, you and I are going to be together actually in the coming months, February 7th through the 9th in Lake Tahoe, Nevada at the Frost and Sullivan Star event. And I'm looking forward to hearing what you're going to be speaking about. And there you've got actually a topic. Correct me if I'm wrong. I think the topic is how strategic use of analytics will drive cross-sell and upsell. Is that the topic?
That is correct.
Now, this is an interesting one because obviously working for Samsung, you've got a lot of data, I'm sure, and you've got a lot of revenue. I think if I'm not mistaken, is it about 6 billion with a B in revenue that you're supporting?
Yeah, our B2B mobile organization alone is about $6 billion, part of a $300 billion company. So a very fascinating position to be in.
Yeah, just a small piece of revenue. Yeah, I mean, 6 billion. Come on.
That's right.
So this is a topic that I think is really interesting because one of the challenges that we in sales have is being able to make better decisions about deals. Will they close? How will they close? What time will they close? And I really feel like the role of sales operations is to help us become better equipped to make better decisions and to use sales analytics to provide us insight really on how to close or when something might close, how to upsell, and trigger points to cross-sell. Do you agree with that?
Absolutely. Yeah. My philosophy from sales operations has always been anything we can do to make the team sell more faster. So that fits right into exactly what you're saying. Anything we can provide to the team to make them more productive and make them drive better decisions quicker to make a quicker sale and obviously a more lucrative sale to the company.
Yeah. Well, and that's what the company is absolutely looking for. Do you think though, I mean, I oftentimes feel like that there is this like tug of war. Maybe you're on there's sales and then there's sales operations. That we oftentimes salespeople feel like the sales ops team is on the other side of the team, if you would. Do you feel like that's a bad categorization of the relationship? Or should we think of it as a true partnership and that your really operations is helping us to do more with the data that we've got?
Yeah, if you're doing it right, it should absolutely be a partnership. And I take it a step further, you should be a part of sales. So one of the things that's critical to me and has been critical to my success is making sure I get out to the field. So I'll go on sales calls from time to time. I'll go to partner meetings from time to time, not to interject all that much, but really to make sure I understand what the day in the life of a sales associate is, what the sales managers are dealing with. If you're doing it right, sales operations is a portion of your sales organization, driving enablement, and really you're the bridge between the business and sales. So your job is to make the business goals aligned to the sellers, to make sure that what they're selling and how they're selling is tied to your strategic business initiatives, right? And the products they're trying to drive. So I really look at sales ops as that bridge and a portion of sales, not something that is combating sales. If you become a combatant to sales or you have that caustic relationship, it becomes really difficult to get things done within sales operations and sales. You're both losing.
Yeah. That sometimes happens though. And we'll talk about this later on in the podcast when it comes to especially like quota setting, right? The quota setting is I've been through that for many, many years. And boy, I tell you, I mean, it's it's the sore subject when talking with salespeople, but a subject that must be talked about. On the other hand, though, I used to have sales operations as part of my team. And the one thing I always told the sales folks is watch out, because these guys help pay your commissions.
That's absolutely right. You're everybody's best friend when it's time to pay.
Exactly right. Exactly right. So, I mean, there's a huge important role for sales operations. And I want to talk about evolving sales analytics, because I believe, my personal philosophy, Bill, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, challenge me, tell me I'm crazy, but I believe that oftentimes sales operations teams get so consumed in translating the needs of the business and trying to figure out how it applies to the sellers that we forget how to actually enable the sellers to do more, and that becomes like a lower priority of really working with the needs of the business. And I think that's my personal experience. I don't know if you agree with me, but nonetheless, it is an area that has to be laser focused, in my opinion, from sales operations to understand data and help the reps do something with it. What do you think about that?
No, I absolutely agree with you. And I think more and more as data becomes more complex and the buyers are much more educated now with the, digital evolution really in high gear, it becomes more and more important that you are focusing on enablement, making sure your sellers understand why your initiatives are in place, how you're expecting them to go to business, making sure they understand their processes. And it's something I think a lot of companies are struggling with right now. It's something that for sure Samsung was struggling with. And one of the reasons they brought me in is Samsung's legacy and history is really manufacturing. So they look at things from a very much a manufacturing supply chain scope. And selling, if you look at the evolution of Samsung, is really something that's almost fairly new to them, right? It's only about a decade old where they really started becoming the sales and marketing company. So learning a lot about that. And then when you add that complexity of business to business selling, enablement becomes even much more important, right? Because it's really about how your sales team is interacting with their accounts to make these sales, not just speeds and feeds of your products and discounts and promotions, which is more of a consumer play. So you're 100% correct. And it's something we're working on quite a bit over the last many months, is to drastically improve our enablement processes, our learning and development team, so on and so forth.
So how do you, as a sales operations team, help us in the field drive more selling time? We'll go with that one first. And then I want to come back to using analytics. How do you help enable us to be smarter and make better decisions? What are some things, some tips or tricks, or some of the things that you guys may be working on literally right now?
So from an analytics perspective, you have to make sure a lot of people, what I talk about and what I'll talk about more when I present at Frost and Sullivan, is I really believe in what a lot of people commonly discuss is the 4 levels of analytic maturity. Okay. And it's descriptive, diagnostic, predictive, and prescriptive. And predictive is that big catchphrase everybody's been throwing around for the last 5 years. And then prescriptive is something people are talking about more and more, and something that's near and dear to my heart. And to be honest with you, all these things have been around forever, but now with the evolution of the big data, it's becoming more and more a topic of conversation. So, right, descriptive analytics don't really help much from a seller's perspective, because all that's doing is telling you what happened in the past. That's not going to help a seller. Diagnostic is starting to understand why things happened the way they did, but you're still looking at the past. So again, not necessarily something you're going to help. You provide that to your seller, all right, they know history of their account maybe, but how is that going to help me upsell, cross-sell? How am I going to know, the right time to push the right product with this company, et cetera? So then you move on to your predictive analytics, and that starts getting into more data modeling and some algorithms and predictions about where the business is going to go in the future based on what you've seen in the past and maybe some of your sales pipeline. But again, you're still asking for data from your sales organization, not necessarily providing them. And so that's why I like prescriptive analytics. Prescriptive analytics starts taking that, who, what, where, and why, and starts putting a decision and an effect around it. And ultimately, that's all a sales guy or a sales lady would like to know is, if I have this data, what decisions can I help my customer make? And how can I get an effect out of that? And obviously that effect is to win the deal. So it's a lot about understanding the buyer journey more and more than ever, right? If you're just selling speeds and feeds, at least in our industry, where we're trying to sell solutions, you're not going to win. You're just going to be outpriced. So what are those tools that I can provide you? And what is that data I can provide you to make sure that you're a disruptor in the sale, that you're not just bidding on an RFP, but you're solving a problem for the customer that they might not have even known they had. And then that gets a lot into enablement wrapped around analytics. So do I understand the market? Do I understand the kind of buyer that I'm going after? What are the solutions I should be selling to them? What are their core issues? And then providing the collateral and learning that the seller needs to both understand how to make that sale and then the collateral to bring to the customer to drive that sale forward. So it's our job to take all of the data we're receiving, working with the enablement team to put that in a package that makes sense for the seller, then taking that and easily being able to translate that to the customer. And really, ideally, the customer feels like they're getting something very unique that's perceived value to them, right? That you're solving something for them that's not just out of the box, but a unique solution that the seller has driven to them. But we need to help provide those tools. You can't just have sellers going out trying to make those decisions on themselves. It's not scalable and it's unpredictable. And some people have that skill, some people don't.
So you just brought a layer of complexity that, frankly, I really never thought about before. And that is all of this data that needs to be analyzed and then created in a prescriptive analytics, the who, the what, the when, the why, taking this data that we have and then turning it around and working with the enablement team to serve it up in such a way that salespeople can easily figure out, this is what I know, and this is what I need to do, and this is the collateral that I might need in terms of helping my buyer through the buyer's journey and the process, which also involves your marketing team as well. Yeah?
Correct.
So that's
and marketing throughout the process too. I think that's very important, and something I've been discussing a lot with, and you'll see in the industry, is it's not just marketing coming in, providing leads and maybe a little bit of cover online, but making sure that that marketing story is prevalent throughout the entire buying journey. So, in the old days, marketing would say, all right, I provided X amount of MQLs into you. You've accepted X amount of leads. I'm providing some content. I'm done. Look at the success. Look at all these MQLs that converted. That's not where it stops anymore. It has to, just like enablement, just like sales apps, we all have to be connected to the hip throughout the entire buying process. The buyer is much smarter than they were before. So you need to constantly stay connected. I know you talk a lot about digital. When you look at the digital age, customers are now going back to your web page or a web page or the internet and balancing out what your sales associate is telling you with the content that they're seeing on the internet. And you need to make sure your marketing team is driving that correctly so that the story your sellers are selling is tied to what you're providing on that page, or else they start questioning, wait a second, you're telling me this, but I'm not seeing that on the content that I'm seeing online. What's going on here? Yeah. So those interlocks are more important than ever. And that gets into data again, is the data that we're providing and the content that we're providing flowing through all of our resources correctly and interlocked.
I love what you just said, because Vengreso, the digital sales transformation company, we are laser focused on helping a marketing organization really understand what their content strategy is and how it maps to the buyer's journey, and then take that and help the sales team figure out how to utilize that at the right time in the right process. But the big one that's missing, which we are so passionate about, in fact, we won't even do digital sales training programs without solving this particular problem first. And it's the branding piece. It is making sure that the digital profiles of a sales rep speak to the buyer, because when they go to engage with that buyer, that content and that what the buyer's journey is going through in terms of wanting to create awareness, wanting to understand who do you help, how do you help, what business problems you solve, they need to be able to speak to that on that particular profile, and that it needs to match what marketing's saying on the global level. And it's a huge miss in the marketplace. In fact, I haven't done analysis on Samsung, but almost every single organization we go into, most times the LinkedIn profile, as an example of a sales rep, is the quota crushing advertisement for a sales rep. It is the recruiting.
Yes, very true.
Which, by the way, I mean, LinkedIn, it's heavyweight champion of the world in terms of, finding new jobs. But when you're in a position where now you're working for a company, your branding needs to turn in from a resume into a resource. And you hit the nail.
Absolutely.
And that's so important. And that's what we built out our personal branding practice for that specific reason, because oftentimes reps, this is the one I love. Reps have on their quota crushing sales rep, 10 times President's Club winner. But then this is the best one I've seen. The best or amazing contract negotiator. Wait a minute. Your buyers don't care about that. In fact, they don't want the best contract negotiator.
No, they want the opposite.
Exactly.
Of course.
Yeah, yeah. So you said something that's very unique and very important. But I want to go back to something else that you said, which was really taking all of the data and helping to work with the different departments. Do you think, because that thinking to me, in my opinion, Bill, is very progressive thinking. It is the bleeding edge, cutting edge. We still to this day, in fact, I think I'm up to a little over 300 executive meetings over the course of the last almost 2 years, a little over 18 months. We still to this day are talking to marketing organizations and marketing leaders and sales leaders that are in Fortune 1000 and 100 companies that still don't think that the buyer has changed, that still believe that pounding the phone to get to your buyer with a 3% return on that investment out of 100 calls to connect with somebody is still the way to do it. What do you think? What does your data tell you in terms of how the buyer has changed and the results of salespeople's engagements and the ways that they engage? Is it true? Has the buyer really changed? And has they changed? Should sales process change as well?
Yeah, absolutely. So interesting. CEB has some interesting statistics, and I'm quoting this out of memory, but it was something like, I believe it was 40% of the buying process prior to something like the last few years, the last time they did this survey, was really interaction with the seller. And the data they're seeing now is it's really 17%. So only 17% of a buyer's decision is based on the interaction with the sales associate. So some people look at it and say, all right, so now you're telling me the sales associate is important, but that's the incorrect conclusion. It becomes that much more important because now you're only getting 17% of your buyer's time and they're coming in very well educated. So if you don't nail that story, if you're not able to sell your value, you are going to lose every time, or you're going to end up just winning by price and eventually you're not going to be profitable. So it's more important than ever to have really strong sales teams, but everybody has to be very aware. If you're not aware of how much the buying process has changed and the impact that digital is having on the buyer's process, you're not going to be in business very long. Yeah. No way.
Yeah. I cannot disagree. My new keynote for 2018 is the modern buyer requires a modern seller. In my CMO liked to use that saying. He said, needs a modern seller. And I said, no. It's got to be requires a modern seller. And the modern seller is somebody who's educated with data. They've got data points that helps them understand how they can approach a particular buyer. What is important to that particular buyer? I literally got an email this morning, and it was the head of marketing for a sales stack company that is a well-known organization. And it was a canned email. And it said, we help organizations with their implementation related to Salesforce.com. And it didn't say organizations. It said enterprise organizations. Enterprise. So somehow, some way, I got pulled into this on my email. And my response back was, no, thank you. I'm not an enterprise organization, period. Because if they had done any level of research and just determined who is Vengreso, yes, we are the digital sales transformation, the largest social selling training company globally. Yes, but we're not a 10,000 person sales organization. We're not even a one, we're 25. Right? So just the messaging was all off. And what I want to know from you, Bill, is help me understand when we talk about data, where is this data coming from? How is it served up to sales reps? What should sales reps and sales leaders expect from sales operations in terms of how you serve up the data and what the type of data is that will be served up to help me make better decisions to engage with clients?
Sure, lots of questions there. And I'd also like to go back to one of your other facts. And just an antidote, I get probably half a dozen of those emails every day as a sales ops guy. And you're right. In fact, it's probably something we could talk about in a little bit is some of this new robo selling and how we're trying to use artificial intelligence, but I don't know that we've quite hit the mark there yet.
Yeah.
In terms of data comes from many different sources now. So, right, you have your sales data. So you have your sales history, so on and so forth. Then you're leveraging lots of outside market data, right, to understand your customer base, customer sizing, things of that nature. And then what is your most important data source is coming from your sales team. So what they're loading into your CRM system and understanding their pipeline, and understanding the organizations they're going after, that's one of the most important, but yet the most difficult piece of data to manage. So structuring and managing a proper CRM system, which We have not perfected at Samsung yet. We launched Salesforce when I first started, and we're, in the middle of that evolution. It's more important than ever because some of the details that you need from your customers, which you'll get from your digital marketing, and you'll get feedback, and you'll get leads coming in online, and you have your buying history, and I have market data coming in from IDC, and I have all these analytics coming in from Boardroom and data.com, so on and so forth. And I'm putting all that together, but I need to know more about the customer, more specifically, what are, to your point, if that associate knew more about your company, they would have very easily been able to say, one, wait a second, this is a small company. So probably I'm going after them completely incorrectly.
Exactly.
But second of all, been able to say, all right, what is the type of company? And then what type of solution can I drive in there? So it's more collaborative now in that data collection process. What is the seller deriving from their account? And then how can I enable them to leverage that information that they know, plus the historical and market data that I have, and create that into collateral that they can then use to drive back to their customer. A lot of people talk about account-based marketing. To an extent, that's a big piece of account-based marketing. You need to understand the accounts you're going to market to. Just marketing to a vertical within a set of accounts may not be correct. You need to understand more specifically what makes that account tick. And sometimes that is some effort from a sales associate, but putting that all together is really sales and sales enablement role, and making sure that it then becomes a consistent message.
So you said something, and before we take a quick break, I want to hone in on this. And you said something to me that a large part of the data source that you will help to analyze is what your sales team loads into your systems and CRM.
Mm-hmm.
And that is such an important element. So any salespeople that are listening right now, we hate CRM. I get it. We hate Salesforce automation. I get it. Everybody does. But if we just take a step back and listen in what Bill Sexton just said, is we can become a lot smarter, and correct me if I'm wrong, Bill, a lot smarter if we have better data being inputted, and it could help them be served up with better analytics on what to do next. Is that correct?
100%. And that's where I see things like Salesforce promotes Einstein, but these artificial intelligence tools. So for example, if you have a win process, right? And you have a process in which associate wins a deal, and maybe he writes a brief paragraph or two or sentence or two about what made that deal successful. And if you have a really strong artificial intelligence system in a few years that can now parse those pieces of information together and start creating stories of how you best win versus the deals that you've lost and how you've lost, that can be very powerful. But it all stems from that input coming from the sales associate. But if you manage that correctly, the things you can do now and near in the future will be astronomical. The value you can drive, the stories you can start to build to provide back to your sellers, to push back into their customers, can be extremely powerful. But really nothing is, at least not in my lifetime, I don't think, going to replace that seller, the interaction that seller is having with the customer, and the data they're able to garner from that one-on-one conversation, especially when you're trying to sell value.
I love what you said, and I want to take a quick break. But before we take this break, we're going to come back and we're going to talk about win reporting, because you said something that's it's a big sticking point in my mind, in my total career. So we're going to come back. We're going to talk about win reporting. We're going to talk about quota setting, and I'm going to talk about your automation. There's those three things we talk about. So everybody stay tuned for this 1 minute long program break from our sponsor. I'm excited to mention Vengreso's partnership with Frost Sullivan on the launch of the Sales Team Alpine Retreat, STAR for short. Vengreso is proud to be a partner for the event, and I'll also be presenting a session on digital selling strategies and tactics. If you're not already familiar with Frost Sullivan's STAR Executive MindXchange, you're missing an amazing opportunity to participate in what will be the most important sales leadership think tank ever. I encourage you to join us at STAR February 7th through the 9th, 2018 in Lake Tahoe, Nevada. As an event partner, we're super excited to extend a $250 savings to all Vengreso event attendees. For more information, please visit frost.com/Vengreso. That's frost.com/Vengreso, Vengreso. All right. Before the break there, Bill, I said we wanted to talk about win reporting, quota setting, and automation. First of all, I believe that there is a place for AI. There is a place for automation. And recently somebody tagged me on a post and they said, what do you think? Should we use automation inside of our sales processes? Is it make us look bad? Does it not make us look bad? We use it. We absolutely use automation. But here's what I can tell you. 2 days ago, I received an email that said, hello, Mario M. period, comma. And so
fantastic.
I knew immediately that you downloaded my email address after connecting with me, threw it into your LinkedIn, threw it into your email marketing system, and all of a sudden I got into your messaging because my first initial is inside my first name field inside of LinkedIn so that it can show Mario M. Martinez Jr. So my response was, I gave this as an example in the write-up, and I said, here's the thing. Use automation, but don't let your automation suck. And I think it's important to hear that.
Well said.
Oh, God, Lee, I mean, people, marketing, salespeople, we may have a problem, go back and correct it. Tell the customer before they tell you, right? But don't let the automation suck. It's a powerful tool, but if you let it suck, you're going to suck and it's going to ruin your brand. But one thing I want to come back to is you talked about the win reporting. Bill, when I was in the seat as a salesperson, I spent 18 years in corporate sales. 15 of those 18 years I spent in the 100% of President's Club, okay? When I won a deal, my win reports would be like a 3-page long case study. Now, what was interesting is, back then I didn't think, okay, one day it's going to be very valuable for the future. There's going to be artificial intelligence. It's going to help read this type of thing and it's going to better equip salespeople that I may lead one day. I never thought about those types of things. What I thought about was, if I could articulate the whole story and build a case study around the win, why I won, what I did, what the process was, who my champions were, what were some of the obstacles, others will learn from it. But I see these win reports that come from sales reps, and they are 1-sentence long answers to how they won the deal.
Extremely frustrating.
Give me a freaking break, people. Help your sales brethren out. But also, now we're going into this era where you've got artificial intelligence. And as these tools become smarter, it starts to read this content and this data, and it can also help you in future deals. Is that correct?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's just frustrating. Something I'm combating right now with this new sales organization we have at Samsung, who's, in many ways learning their way around what we're trying to do in a complex organization. But you'll get these win notes that are providing no insight. And even to the point where we started providing very specific questions to answer, and it becomes very tactical to gather that information. And then even when you have win notes and case studies, and I think why some people don't take them seriously, an age-old problem is because it's a written word, because it's not necessarily, even when you score wins, right? And maybe a lot of win notes I've seen in CRMs, the first step is you choose a couple very generic statements so you can track those statements. We won because of value. We won because of product. We won because, well, what does that tell me? So now I have a chart that shows me value and product and memory. That doesn't help.
Yeah.
So what helps is that full study that Mario is writing 3 pages, but then somebody in enablement sales ops has to read that study. Somebody has to figure out a portal to put that in. How do I get my folks to access that? So that's what excites me about some of this AI potential is now I can take that robust report that you wrote, run that through an AI system, and that will start finding within your content those common threads throughout all of my wins and really start to provide immediate value to these wins. And one thing I'll also throw on top of this, which is another age-old struggle, and I can't say that I've solved it, is loss reporting. Mario wants to write 3 pages about his biggest win. Mario hates writing a paragraph about why he lost. And I think it's very important how you approach that, as we're not trying to come down on you and everybody loses. If you're winning 100% of the time, you'd be the greatest salesperson ever to live. And you're probably doing something illegal. So you're going to lose. That's part of the game, but it's important for us to understand why so we can learn from that and improve and make sure that whatever happened doesn't happen again. Or maybe it's just something that we couldn't control.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll tell you a little secret. I was once asked, why do you write these 3-page long case studies for your win reports? And maybe they weren't 3 pages. Maybe I'm over exaggerating. Maybe they were 1 to 3 pages, but they were linked. They were beefy, right? I mean, this was a whole beef. This is what my answer was, is because here's what I realized, that if I wrote a long win report and case study, almost every single time, I can't even think, I'm thinking of 18 years worth of history. I can't think of a time, it's possible, but almost every single time, guess whose win was highlighted on the regional or national or global call?
There you go.
Right. So if you're a salesperson or sales leader listening to this and your salespeople have not cracked the code of recognition, by golly, you tell them to write that win report with a 2-page, 3-page long essay.
Yeah, the only guy who would trump you on that is if he gets the customer to actually write a testimonial. That's the platinum. Win report's the gold. Absolutely. You get one of those two things, you are a hero every time. And in all seriousness, it's an important, especially if you look at Samsung, we have layers and we sell through the channel and we're selling in the B2B space, we're selling consumer products to some extent to the business world and trying to explain the advantage of that. And so you find yourself sometimes proving why you were integral to that sale. Well, that's sold through AT&T and Verizon. They would have made that sale anyway. Well, if you have a strong win note and you're managing your opportunities appropriately in CRM, that's the proof. You're showing your value. So when you hit into hard times and maybe you're seeing you look like you're doing really well, maybe the company's struggling, you can then very easily prove your performance. The organization doesn't get put into question if you're managing your pipeline correctly.
Yeah. All very good points. We have a few minutes left here. We're probably not going to do this topic justice. I may have to invite you back, Bill, but this one, I'm going to close. This is a hot topic with sales reps, and it's about quota setting. And every year we go through it, and sometimes the cheese is moved even during the middle of the year. And
I have a good story about that.
It drives reps bananas. Tell me, is it as hard for you as it is for us? I'm not trying to put, sales ops on the other side of salespeople.
No.
Is quota setting as hard for you as it is for a sales rep and leader to accept quota setting?
So Alexander Group puts out a compensation almanac every year, and they do a survey on, hundreds of companies and what their top issues are. Within the top 5, it's always compensation planning and quota setting. So for as long as I can remember them existing as a company. So it's not just me, and it's going to be an issue, and it becomes more and more difficult as the selling process and their products and solutions become more complex. So yeah, it's painful across the board, and it's very important as a first step. Like you said, it's a very meaty topic, but at the very least, if anybody gets anything out of this call on compensation, you have to partner with your sales leadership. Look, you're going to get a goal. At Samsung, we get goals from headquarters coming in from Korea, and we're going to have to go after that goal. And we're going to have to divide that goal up, and we're going to have to build quota tied to that target. But it's very important that we take those goals and work very closely with our sales leaders to determine what are the right metrics to put in place within that compensation plan to drive the behaviors and the results, more importantly, that we want. And then how do we build this quota appropriately and make sure that we're building appropriately both from the top down and the bottoms up. So sales operations will work on more of a tops down view, but it's very important you give your leaders the chance to build a bottoms up view. Again, you're going to have to come to an agreement or consensus onto a total number that's going to have to tie to the business directive you've been given, but you can do it in a right way that it's a partnership that's going to be less painful, and you'll get a better result, hopefully, at the individual level, because you're not just peanut buttering a quota across, 100 sellers and 50 of them are killing it because the quota is too low for the set of accounts they have or the territory they have, and the other ones are struggling and can't feed their families because you didn't take the time to really look at each of those sellers' set of accounts or territory and what are the dynamics within each of those organizations. So I would leave that very simply. There's a lot of aspects to sales compensation planning, but most importantly is making sure that your sales leadership and managers are hand in hand with you throughout the entire process. And that can be painful. It can be like getting a bill through Congress. But if you don't do that and you just push out a compensation plan and you just push out a quota, then you've created sales ops versus the sellers, and they feel disconnected and they don't feel like they've had a say. So it's important. That partnership is the most important part of compensation planning.
So I'm going to give a secret tip for all those listening. If you want to be in good graces with the compensation plan design the quota setting team, make sure you give a good bottle of wine, some box of chocolates a couple times a year to your compensation design planner.
Bourbon's good for me.
Bourbon's good for you. That works. Bill, this has been a phenomenal conversation. I'm very excited that you were on the program with me. Do me a favor. If someone is interested in reaching out directly to you, what's the best way? Is it Twitter, LinkedIn?
LinkedIn. Absolutely LinkedIn.
All right. So they should send a personal connection request. Is that right?
Absolutely. Always.
Fantastic. And
if I don't know who you are, I'm not going to accept. So tell me who you are.
And you heard Bill on the Selling with Social podcast here. Also, Bill, I always like to ask this final question to all my guests. Tell me your all-time favorite movie in the world. What is it?
Yeah, that is not an easy question, but I'll put my nerd hat on. I'm going to go with Empire Strikes Back. The best of the entire Star Wars series, still and always.
All right, there you are, another Star Wars fan. I love it. Bill, It's been a pleasure having you on the Selling with Social podcast. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Hey, thank you, Mario. I can't believe how quick it went.
It went fast, but that time goes by when you're having fun.
That's right.
Thanks, buddy. Thanks so much for joining me on that episode of Selling with Social. I hope you found as much value in that episode as I did. Here's what I want you to do next. Please go to www.vengreso.com. That's VENGRESO.com. VENGRESO.com. And make sure that you get access to our content. We've got the latest and greatest in digital sales, sales training, content marketing, and social selling strategies that are going to help you grow your sales pipeline. I look forward to having you on the next show of Selling with Social. Make sure you also go to Vengreso.com/podcast to be able to get access to the latest and greatest Selling with Social episodes, along with any of the other episodes that we've got from Social Business Engines with my friend and partner, Bernie Borges, along with Conversations with Phil with my friend and partner, Phil Gerbishak. Thanks again for joining on Selling with Social.